loved about what I saw with TaChelle is she's going to explain to us what DE&I is.
And I was reading press release after press release, commitment after commitment, promise after promise, black fist after black fist of companies making commitments to do better. From June 2020 to December 2020, corporations in this country pledged over $50 billion, with a B, to diversity, equity, and inclusion, to advancing DEI. $50 billion in 6 months. I'd say we had a problem, right? I don't know how many corporations just start pledging things for the sake of pledging things. This was a real issue. Yet, by the end of December, less than half of 0.5% had actually been spent. So there was a gap, big gap. And like Bill said earlier, I see opportunity. I realize these companies don't know what they're doing. They're taking advice from companies that also don't know what they're doing. They're taking advice from companies that don't know or understand diversity. They're taking advice from companies that don't know, understand DEI. They also don't understand what it's like to be a woman like me, watching what I watched, just like you, and then reading a statement from a company who we all know had no intentions of really making good. So then let's talk about the real why. How many of you have built your businesses or have grown your businesses on relationships? Hands up. That's what I thought. Okay, relationships are officially changing. Because now these commitments that we have made to DEI, these companies that have promised that we are going to do better about diversity, equity, and inclusion, can no longer simply rely on relationships. Because now you have to give TaChelle fair access. You can't just pick up the phone and call Steven like you have for the last 10 years. Sorry. That's the way it is. And I have a little bit of a story. So one of the companies I worked for, I was the director of sales and marketing, and I oversaw our corporate partnerships. When I left that company, the senior vice president called me back over the course of 2 years, 3 times to come back and work for him. Well, in 2020, he called me again. And I think we all talked about my mindset in 2020, right? This was not the time to call TaChelle. But he did. And I said, yeah, I'm not interested in coming back to work for you, but I am curious about what you're doing about DEI. Silence. No, seriously, what are you doing about DEI? Well, we have a council. I worked for the company for 5 years. Who's on the council? These are fair questions. Because your relationships are going to change. No, we're solid. We've been at Staples Center for 15 years. We've been at Barclays. We opened Barclays. We've done this. Okay. So let me explain to you how this is really going to work. You're under the assumption that Staples Center is your client. Okay? Bear with me. I'm gonna connect these dots. You're under the impression that Staples Center is your client. They're not. Do we remember the summer 2020 when LeBron and a couple of the other NBA players decided that they were not going to play? Didn't seem like that big of a deal because the stadiums and the arenas were already empty, right? But when LeBron stated we are not going to play, that kind of changed things for the NBA. Because what LeBron was really saying is, you guys don't do something about this, you're going to have a bigger problem. And so when I was explaining this to my ex-boss, your real client is the NBA. It's not Staples. It's the NBA. And let me make this very clear. LeBron means more than your hot dogs by a long shot. And so what I'm trying to say is that's going to start to trickle down. It's not going to just be enough to have those relationships. I need to know that you actually have a diversity, equity, and inclusion plan within your company, or you don't get that contract renewed. Moving into contracts, because that's what's happening. The relationships that you have or have had now have performance attachments to diversity, equity, and inclusion. So how many diverse suppliers, how many diverse contractors? What are you doing to advance diversity? If I go in and I look at your company, but you're in Chicago, but everyone within your organization is 100% white, you can't claim diversity. And that's going to affect relationships. That's going to affect contracts. It's ugly. I hate that it's come to this, right? Because if we had just been doing right from the damn beginning, we wouldn't be where we are today. But it is what it is. Contracts are 100% going to be up for examination. I was talking to a woman last night who told me in the last couple of years, she's had several of her clients ask her for her diversity, equity, and inclusion program, for her statement. They want to see how many employees that work for her company fall under a diverse category. And for the record, a diverse category is a person of color, veteran, woman, or LGBTQ plus, or disabled. How many people fall under that category? And you can't actually just say, oh, I have a very diverse board, and it's 100% white women. That's no longer acceptable anymore either. So contracts are going to be up for grabs, which leads me to number 3, which is competition. So you've got someone like me, who I know you're relying on your relationships, which is great, because I'm paying attention to their commitments, right? So I'm going after what they're publicly saying. You following? Is this scary?